start with a story. I think it's fun to give context of like just psychology and where people are and things like that. So I am OCD, probably
Okay.
clinically and to a fault. Like I check doors and locks 3 times. If I see something I
Oh,
want,
I've seen you do that at the
yeah,
house. Lock
I
the
do.
door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do like, I'll check it 3 times and I'll go back and check it. Did I lock it? I'm OCD to the point where I probably, like probably should be medicated, but I'm not.
Okay.
And I always said that is a blessing and a curse. So I'm going to share a screen with you and something that I have, but it's just going to be a funny kind of, it's going to be a funny example of something that I did. So this is a car I bought. And if you're watching
I
on
remember it.
YouTube, right, you know it, right?
It's doing that funny thing where you split the screen, by the way. So just,
Yeah. You know what? It's
it's okay. I can see it though.
you can see it, but let me do this. All right. So this is a car that I bought. And it's highly impractical. But I saw it, Craig, years ago, and I was like, man, that's a really interesting car. I want one. And I unfortunately obsess about things until I get them. Okay. So here it is, right? I had it built. I labored over it, and it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's
Just
obviously made for
I didn't
someone
want
who's
to tell
compensating for something.
well, look at what I drive. But listen, I when you showed me that car, I mean, you're so excited about it. I'm like, this is amazing. But let me just be honest with you right now. There's no fucking way I'd ever drive that car. FYI. And I know you love it, but I don't want to take the wind out of your stories.
No, it's
Keep
fine.
going.
It's fine. And
Okay.
look,
I just had to say
my
that.
kids love it. Like it's fun. It's not my daily
Oh,
driver.
it's amazing. It's a Tonka truck.
So every time I drive it, invariably someone comes up and says, "Holy shit, this is amazing. I want to buy this car." Maybe not every time, but like,
Right, but
is
a
it
lot.
for sale? And my response is, everything's for sale, right? Like everything is for sale. I mean, I'm not
I
an
always say
idiot
the
to
same
not
thing.
entertain the offer. So as you know, I'm going to remove this off the screen now, Craig.
Are you liking that, by the way, just to close that chapter? Do you love that car, that truck, whatever you call it?
I like it. Look, it scratched the itch. And I think for me, if I hadn't scratched the itch and been ridiculous, I'm not going to get hurt on that car. One day I will
you
sell
definitely won't get hurt on it. No.
Right? It's ridiculous. And it'll be a story and my kids will remember it. But I scratched the itch. And sometimes I have to do that in life, right? My parents say that I had these campaigns in life. And I would, if I wanted a dog, like I was obsessive until I got a dog.
I'm the same way, by the way. So I don't know if that's your OCD part, but I'm relentless when I want something. I can't get it out of my head, and I do deep dives on everything. Like I just bought
like autonomy driver.
Yeah, that's that red dot on our profile.
It's an unhealthy obsession. So as you know, so you mentioned actually on the podcast yesterday that I'm in YPO.
Yep.
And YPO is called Young Presidents Organization. If any of you have heard of EO, it's the evolution of after EO, after you've gotten to a critical mass of either revenues or employees or whatever. So it's a lot of people who have large businesses. Mm-hmm. And I just attended, and part of your YPO membership, they give you some tuition free. And so I just got back maybe late this summer, maybe it was August, I think. And I was in Dallas for a 3-day workshop on mergers and acquisitions. Mainly, Craig, because I felt like I wasn't educated enough on the processes that is going on in our industry a lot. And when I mean, and usually mergers and acquisitions are investment bankers, and private equity, right? That's what this conference was about. And I say, what better way to learn than to kind of go into the lion's den, so to speak? Because like many people listening on this call, you and I get hit up on a basis, and sometimes very legitimately from private equity. And sometimes we have entertained those conversations just because, back to the car example, right? Like, hey, is it for sale? Well, duh, everything's for sale at some point. There is, you offer $1 billion for something, right? Just to be dramatic, it's for sale. So, I know that people get kind of leery when it's like, well, you're selling your practice. No, I'm not selling the practice. I'm not selling the practice. I love my practice. I love my practice. I love my team. Love the culture, just like you do. But we have had conversations, right? Almost to educate and understand, I would say, as a primary driver. So anyway, I have had conversations with people who are legit, Craig, and where I'm going with this, and there's going to be a battle cry the end pretty soon in this message. So don't tune out yet. And I'm
Yeah, and I just want to add on that, Peter. Sorry to interrupt your monologue, but this is the most important podcast I think we've ever done. And I just really, I want people that are hearing this is this, sometimes we just kind of go on rants and just talk about various things, but this is a call to our industry, actually.
Do you remember? It's going to evolve to be. I think you're going to remember this. I remember we were having a Q&A at the end of not this past summit, but the one before. I think this was in Texas, and someone asked, like, what keeps you up at night? They asked both of us, like, what keeps you up at night, and what bothers you most, and like, what are you going to be focused on?
And I don't recall it, but yeah, okay. No, I don't recall. Actually,
your answer. I think I have the recording of it because I think it was important. Because I actually asked Lacey, and it was basically this, like, saving our industry from some of the parasitic activity.
Yes, I do remember this now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was something I'm obsessed with. And you and I went through permutations even back in 2017 when blockchain, we were trying to look at, like, how do we tokenize dental practices so that all the dentists can win, and why is private equity winning, and blah blah blah. I mean, we've gone through we've gone through permutations of being obsessive.
Well, hundreds of hours and meeting with people. Remember my buddy Morton, and flying up to Atlanta, and Josh was involved, and different people, and then Tim and.
Yeah. So it's been on the radar. And so,
well, let's just kind of unpack why. Why does this leave you or me sleepless? Like let's just talk about.
Well, can I give some more stories before? So, like I said, I'm like, when a legit private equity calls or makes an LOI and I'll start defining some of these terms, because I know if you're listening, you may not know what some of these terms are. LOI is a letter of intent. Right. So it's an intent for someone to give you cash or give you terms of a deal, a term sheet. A term sheet basically says the cash, here's how you get it, here's the timeline, all these things. So again, in order to learn more, you have to get repetitions. So I always take the call if it's legit, and mainly to learn from the other side of the table. So I've gone down this road multiple times.
As have I.
And in the end, Craig, sometimes you get romantic about some of the money or the things that are thrown out, but in the end, they all are bullshit offers. And what I mean by that,
well, the ones we've seen, I'm sure.
But like, wouldn't you see that we've probably seen some of the cream of the crop, given that the scale of our ecosystems, the jointness, the influence, all these things.
Yeah, listen, my buddy John always says he's never seen a business plan or an LOI he didn't like. The LOI is pretty cool.
And this happened just even recently. It's a bullshit offer with, quote unquote, something called an enterprise value. So here's where they're going to get you. Hey, doc, we're valuing your practice at $30 million. But guess what? We're only going to give you 50% of that in cash. And the other is going to be in this new stock that we have. Some of it will be preferred shares. Preferred shares are basically just bonds, Craig. Right? It's just an interest-bearing stock. It's not stock in the common holdco. Some will be in common. But guess what? All of your shares, they're going to be subordinate to us, meaning our.
I want to back you up just one layer here.
Okay.
Because you've gone down to another more granular level. And I think what needs to be said is, like, the business of PE. Remember what I texted you this morning as a Patrick Bet-David thing? Patrick Bet-David on his Instagram said, short-term thinkers are a dime a dozen. It's just coincidence, by the way. He posted this morning. He wrote, short-term thinkers are a dime a dozen. Long-term thinkers are extremely rare. History books favor long-term thinkers. Don't let short-term attention distract you from your long-term vision becoming a reality. Chase the big. Let everyone else chase the small. So what I believe, and the reason why I didn't want to go, we had gotten to LOI and EBITDA, enterprise value, blah, blah, blah. PE, and we're cutting with very broad brushstrokes here.
Private equity.
What they do is they do investments, and they have a very short timeline. So they want to
wait. Hold on. So they are the GP, Craig, right? So they are the general partners in the deal,
right?
And they have limited partners typically that they have to respond to, right?
Sure. That's a good detail, but I want to keep it just really high level, and let's leave the industry vernacular out for a second so we can distill it down. PE in general will buy a company, whether it's your flooring company or your dental practice or your paint store or whatever else. They are interested in improving profitability and then making an arbitrage on the multiple they bought you and the multiple on the open market. So what does that mean in very simple English? What has happened in dentistry by and large is that a single practice is worth X multiple, blank times earnings. Like, let's call it 6 times your earnings. So you earn
No, it's
100.
not 6, but okay.
Well, whatever. Well, I'm just using examples. But then the banking system and the private equity world has a common understanding that when you take multiple practices that were all bought at X times multiple and aggregate them together. So let's just say you have 7 shitty practices. One of them is worth X dollars, but suddenly by lumping them all together and saying that you have a DSO or a platform, now the market has agreed that that conglomerate, geographically diversified aggregate of those 7 practices per unit is worth more.
Right. So that is the market arbitrage.
That is the arbitrage.
Buy it for $1 million, and now immediately inside the ecosystem, it's worth $3 million.
Right. So therefore, money chases this, and when more money, just like NFTs and everything else and crypto, when money is chasing something, the system tends to get more valuable. So what is happening and where dentistry stands in the crosshairs of an existential threat is that when money has decided that dentistry is the new darling of Wall Street, they're going to try to buy up all the dental practices and push them all together and consolidate them, as we've seen with dermatology and other things. The issue is that it's not necessarily good for dentistry. Private equity is not usually good for the industries they get into. So what do I mean by that? Let me just unpack this, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. When you have everything, and I want to talk about that Project David quote, when you and I are making decisions or we're advising our masterminders, we're always advising them for a long haul. What's a good thing for 5 to 7 years? You know, like the Christmas bonus, as we talked about yesterday. If you're planning on selling your company in 6 months, you're probably going to treat it very differently than if you're probably expanding it. So private equity, by virtue of their investment timeline, they get money, they have to deploy money. If they don't deploy money, they get penalized. And they are planning on exiting that company typically within what, Peter? I don't want to misspeak. 3 to 5, 3 to 6. Typically private timeline from buying to getting out on a PE.
Right, to having another liquidity event. So
right.
Liquidity event is so having cash
selling
and transferred on to someone, selling it to someone.
So like what?
You're right. 3 to 5 years, right? I think it's 3 would be fast. 5 is kind of the general understanding of something called it's a recap.
Right. So for the sake of the listener, it's to sell it. So what happens is you don't really care as much. You have investor pressure now because investors like, hey, what's going on? Why do we have a slow week? Why do we have a slow day? Why are we buying a CBCT? Why are you paying a Christmas bonus? It's a different thing, as most of us,
because all that reduces EBITDA, Craig.
It reduces your profit.
Is what you're saying.
But we do know that if you plan on building an iconic business, you don't really think about what happens next week. Your eye is on, how do I grow? How do I scale? How do I do this? What's it going to look like in 5 years? So there's an investor disconnect between what the PE company, the private equity company, wants to do and maybe what the individual investor wants to do. And so what they do is when they give you the money for your practice and they have the holdback of the second bite, you are at their whim of what they wish to do. And if they think they need to fire your Patty, the director of operations, because they have their own Patty, and they say diagnostic wax ups, why do you need that? And by the way, no more this aligner company. You got to use this one, and no more cotton rolls and blah, 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 blah. They're going to make your company a lot more profitable by doing that, but short term.
At what expense? Right.
At what expense? So what ideally would happen is they'd take your company, they'd buy it, they'd increase profit by squeezing the margins, firing all the superfluous people that they feel are superfluous, recapitalizing or reselling it, making a shit ton of money. They are out. And then you're there at 5 years and 1 day, maybe, and your practice is decimated. I believe that's the existential threat to dentistry.
I would 100% agree, right?
And then so what you and I have
chime in and say, hey, I sold my practice and they made it much better. Patients
much better.
The team
much better.
But I'd love to hear some.
If that exists, Peter, please come. Wait, I just want to make a specific call out. If that exists, because it might exist, please comment below. But what we mean by better, it doesn't mean that your life got better, meaning like you were super frustrated
Yeah,
by
not
owning the
you.
business and now you're out of it. I'm saying quantitatively, the practice got better. The care
Patient
was
care
better.
got better. The team got
The
better.
team was better.
Right, right.
Yes. And that's what doesn't exist. And if
Because I
it
would love
does,
to
I'd
eat
love to.
crow on that, honestly, Craig. I really
Yeah, me
would.
too. Because then we
Yeah.
could sleep at night.
So what I've learned, let me going back. Are you done? I'm sorry. I don't
I
wanna
am
interrupt
done,
you.
but I just
All right.
wanted to
I think
talk
that's a
about.
great. I'm glad you stopped, and because you're right. I tend to go granular, and because I get excited about like
But
just the
that's the
explanation.
why. Because at the end of the day, you were going through a business calculation. Frankly speaking, if your practice is worth 30 and they give you 15 up front and the other 15 you're rolling and you really don't care and you hate your business, that might not be a bad thing for you.
Right. That's
And I
true.
think most of us dentists, not even dentists, but I'm going to go back to another level. Most business owners, the reason why they sell is they hate their business. And a
Right.
lot of business owners is like, okay, I got to sell this thing. So let me get it working properly before I bring it to market. They get it working properly and like, why the hell would I ever want to sell this?
Right. That's the built to sell book. Exactly what
Right.
it is. And it's funny, we dentists, I always say this in the summit, we make these draconian moves. Like I'm burnt out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm this and that and
Yeah,
the
they
other.
just needed to
And the
take off 2 days a
pendulum,
week.
and then they just smash the pendulum the other way. It's like I'm selling. And then they sell, right? As opposed to
Yeah.
like just finding some balance. But
And then they
anyway,
wind up being unfulfilled. So we swing the pendulum so
and
far
now
in
you
life.
sold the good golden goose.
Yeah.
So let me go back to my story
Okay,
here a
please
little
go
bit,
down.
right?
Yeah,
So we're
go down.
talking about, right? So I think people get, what's funny is LOIs and term sheets are designed to, if you've gotten one and you're listening to this, they are designed to make you romantic about the amount of money that you're going to get, right? All you see is the top line number. You don't see how it's divvied up. And a lot of times it's not in your benefit, right? When there's things in terms and pref stock here and pref A and pref D and common, it's all meant to confuse so that your stock is not worth as much. And unlike selling your practice on the private market, Craig, meaning if you go to a broker and you're saying, hey, I want to sell my practice, typically you sell the practice for, let's just call it 85% of top line revenue. You hand over the keys and you walk away. In a private equity situation, you are actually selling. You are more than likely going to have to stay on for the entire term
Yeah, 5
of
years.
that recap, which was, like you said, the 5-year cap. So if someone
And
is
also,
wanting to
let me
sell,
just also unpack that. So you're going to stay on for 5 years and you're going to have clawbacks. So
right,
if your practice does $500,000 in profit per year, they give you half the money up front and half is over 5 years. If the practice starts going down, and let's say it goes down not because of something you did, but they fire Sally and they change the compensation models that you've created. Like let's say you've created the Bulletproof hygiene compensation models where you have hygienists being incentivized on their production. If they fire those people and this practice starts going down, you're the one that's going to pay for it. So imagine like watching them take your
that's called a
sailboat.
clawback.
Yeah, but they're directing the direction of the ship. So it's like if we crash your ship, you are paying for it.
Right.
Here,
Yeah,
let me
yeah,
take the wheel.
exactly. Which is
I'm
why
gonna here, step aside, Captain. I got the ship now. We're going
But if
to
I crashed
slowly.
into the rocks,
Right,
it's
it's your
going to
ship.
cost you. Yeah.
Yeah. We have no shared culpability. I mean, we're incented not to crash the ship, but because we went to Harvard and we have these proprietary systems at our PE firm, how to really run this company better than you do.
Right.
That's the problem. And I think though, we're speaking in general terms. There are people there, Peter, out in our listening audience that are so freaking fed up with their businesses. It's consuming them. You and I have had miserable days and months and years
100%.
where we hated our businesses, Peter. We were suffocated by them. We couldn't see our way through. Like you, like saying, like, if I do another, veneer case, I'm gonna freak out. And then it was just a simple thing, like, hey, let's stop clinical. And now you start liking it again. And then something else comes up. So I think it's really important to point
Or
out
reduce clinical, or
right,
take more vacation, or
right,
something, but not
right.
these draconian moves.
Right. I'd say some of the people that have sold their practices, what
Or
they
hire a
really
personal
probably
assistant.
needed, well, yeah, a personal assistant, but maybe what they needed was a 3-week vacation.
Yeah.
And then we have this need to be consistent with what we believe. So when you believe you hate your practice and you really have convinced yourself, it can drive you to make a draconian move. Or if you sold your practice, you can be driven to think it's what you want. I mean, the strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. So once you start saying, I am burnt out, and that is your dialogue, and how many of our masterminders and people we're in, I am burnt out. They feed it to everyone, and they get like a mailer, and I won't mention the name, but the mailers,
you've mentioned the name before, so don't worry
right?
about
But
it.
like, look at like the mailers that go out. It shows a guy in scrubs, and then half of him's dressed as scrubs, and half is him fishing. Do you hate your practice? Do you hate this all? Don't you want to spend more time fishing?
By the
So
way,
they're
that company is pivoting from that model because it didn't work so well. Where when you hand over the keys and you buy someone's practice, and then you just take over.
let me
with
buy your
new
problem. Let me
dentists.
buy your problem.
They are pivoting into the same private equity model as what we've seen, is where you need to retain, you need to stay on.
But sometimes I think what I'm trying to say too, Peter, and maybe I'm having trouble saying it, is the marketing can actually convince you you're burnt out too. You can actually like your job and like being a dentist. You get enough of those mailers, like, don't you want to spend more time fishing? Life is moving fast. What's your exit strategy?
No, you're right.
Don't you want
We
to take
all
some chips off the table? That's
we
the
all
most
get
famous
fed
one.
up, Craig, and then you think you're helpless, you're drowning. You've been treading
Right.
water for
Right.
it feels like your entire career of doing business and hiring and firing and marketing and actually learning dentistry and going to CE. You feel like you can't catch a freaking breath.
Yeah.
And so the only lever that you think is at your availability is, oh, life will be good if I just sell it to someone else, and then I will go be able to fish. And like I always say in the summits, like I encourage you, if that's something you want to do, go do that for a month. Go do the Corona on the beach, sitting there watching the waves for a month. You will want to blow your brains out.
Yeah. That's like I said with that. You just, how long? I want to sell it and get a yacht and drink champagne. How long? Well, what do you mean?
And
Well, how long?
I love
Like,
the quote
honestly.
of what you say. Well, I love the quote when you say, like, look, if someone's going to give you a pot of money for your business, you're going to have to take that money and go invest in someone else's business.
Right. Yeah. You never exit business.
Yeah, you never exit the business.
You never exit business. Like,
so let's keep going with this because this is we haven't gotten to the battle cry yet. Cry.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to interrupt your story.
Well, you did. Just kidding.
But I just wanted to go.
No, you're good. It's
level.
good. It's good because I have a tendency to go to.
We didn't discuss the why.
Aggressive.
The why is the why for doing everything is dentistry needs to be saved. It's a beautiful profession. And most dentists, unfortunately, we've had literally zero time being trained on how to run the business, how to run the team. We get inordinate amounts of training on how to do the craft. And some of us become exceptionally great at being the actual dentist. And then the other parts we feel like complete failures on, and it causes us to want to throw the handpiece up, because we don't have the training. So
should we get professional food testers and bodyguards after this podcast, Craig? Like Elon's going to need.
Like Elon?
Yeah,
no, I don't think so.
Is the PE industry as a whole going to attack us?
No, listen, the PE is always going to do well. They're always going to do well. And for those, I mean, and listen, our listeners are a different group. If you're listening to this podcast, you're curious about getting better. You're like, okay, I have some weak spots in my armamentarium. I have some holes. I want to fill those holes. I want to get better. I think those that are never going to listen to this or like get that mail and say, you know what, talk to their wife. I love doing the actual dentistry, but I hate everything else. And frankly, I'm not good at it. Okay, what do you want to do, honey? I just want to sell the whole thing.
Right. And
well, okay.
Any of that.
And then I mean, it's fine if that's really where you're at. But if your finger's on the trigger to sell, that we're talking to you. Because before you do that, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. I mean, the same thing for you and me, Pete. Pete and I, in full disclosure, were going to be taken out by a PE firm together. Not long ago. It was a two for.
Then you learn, right? Like you said, it's a death of 1,000 cuts. Well, you promise you're not going to change anything about the team. If anything, you're going to make them better. Yeah. We're going to make everything better. All right, keep the same labs, right? Yeah. Keep the same lab. We don't want to change a thing, right? And then because like I would never want to put my decision. I would never want to make a decision to make a liquidity event to put my team at jeopardy, makes their life worse only in order to make my life better. I wouldn't feel good about that.
You won't have the pillow test. You won't be able to sleep at night.
Yeah. And so it's always like, if it's a win for them, a triple win for them, a triple win for the business gets an injection of capital, right? Like then that's why you're saying I always take the call, because I'm always optimistic and romantic that there is someone out there that can do this. And invariably there is not.
Well,
Okay.
not yet.
Well, right.
But like,
you know why there's not yet, Craig? What I discovered is that when I've sat at many tables, many boardrooms, and I've looked around, and it's like I am constantly reminded. It's like someone puts a big ass Flintstone steak on the table, right? A giant steak. And when everyone sitting at that table has got to take a bite and eat, there's just not enough to go around, and there's just not enough left for the team or your associates or things down the way. Because guess who has to eat first? The people who are taking the quote unquote risk of your practice.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not a good analogy.
No, it is a good analogy.
This is what I discovered every time, is that when there is, like we talked about yesterday on the pod, we talked about in AI, we talked about the someone in the middle, someone making money in the
friction.
middle.
The friction.
Yeah.
And that's where the money's made.
If
so listen,
someone is intermediating,
right. And
then they are making the vig.
Like, so let me just unpack that for a second. There are intermediaries who bring massive value. So let's just look at what the DSO, the PE backed DSO brings. It brings lab fees that are like, for clear aligners that are untouchable for most of us. It brings a reimbursement from Aetna or MetLife or PPOs that would blow you away that what they get versus us. Healthcare coverage costs, economies of scale, supply costs. They are winning when you look at what they can provide from a cost standpoint. They will pay less
of scale.
They will pay less than all of us can pay. So they are bringing that. So in exchange for that, they will tell you they're bringing industry specific knowledge. But the problem is dental practices, like we've talked about before, are like restaurants. There's Applebee's and there's Morton's and there's the mom and pop. And if you try to make them all into Applebee's, the ones that are high end will be Applebee-fied. It'll be like Chick-fil-A, whatever.
It'll be pulled down, right?
Pulled down.
The McDonald's will be pulled up.
Right. So what there's an interesting point on, and I don't want to mention names because I want to be very surgical and I want to be very honest, and I want to be what most people may think is cruel. So I won't mention the different DSOs. There's one DSO that I like to think of like the FUBU of DSOs. It's the for us, by us. Hey, we're all dentists. It's great. This is great. And by the way, bring your friends in. We'll pay you a vig on that. And what do they provide outside of that? What back-end support? What type of training? What way can they make your practice actually better? No way. Like they'll get you 15% off your car insurance is what they'll basically do. They have like a group purchasing I'm just saying they won't make your practice better.
Right.
They have this battle cry of like, hey, we'll all exit together. We'll all make more money.
Hands together. Let's hold hands together.
And we'll go to the beach and we'll get drunk together. And it seems really fun. But at the end of the day, you don't make the practices better. When I look at our masterminders, Peter, and we've had, dozens now come through, we've done mastermind for 3 years.
Yeah, there's been close to 90.
Yeah, I was going to say almost 100. Each single practice got better.
100, you're right. Yeah.
Every single practice that we worked with got better. So yes, the masterminds, a couple thousand a month. Craig, but let me just finish my thought real quick. Sorry. Gosh, okay. No, because yes, it's a couple grand per month that they paid us. But if you take your practice that you hate, and then in a year after the mastermind, now you like your business and you're making more money, that's invaluable. So we have the ground game to say, hey, we made all these practices better. But what were we not able to do, Peter? We were not able to get them a $1,000 lab fee for clear aligners. Right. We were not able to get their Aetna reimbursement from $700 per crown to $900. We're not able to help them with their health insurance. We're not able to, we can't really help in the same ways. We can add same store sales. We can grow their practices, but we can't help with all that DSO stuff. Right. So the DSO will save you cost, but not make your practice better, not make your culture better, not make your team want to be there, not make your hygienist more productive. That's what's frustrating. Sorry, now you can go ahead.
No, that's great. I was saying not only the practice is better, but the humans that are running those practices become happier and healthier and more accountable, and just they like their life again. And some people come in,
what's the cost to that? Yeah, what's the cost to a masterminder literally saying, I want to sell my practice, I'm miserable, I hate it, and 1 year later be like, I never want to sell this. I love it. My team's happy. I'm happy. And they're in their zone. What's that cost?
Here's a couple problems with the industry as it stands, right? In this whole context we're talking about with private equity. Problem number one, I wrote these down, is they always want to have control. As a matter of fact, based on the charter and the GP and the investment, they have to have control of the asset they're buying. Meaning control, I mean, when I say control, I mean complete control over hiring, firing, things like that, right? Clinical care, they can't really dictate. Can't say, hey, use this burr and leave some decay. They can't say things like that.
Of course not.
That's still governed by the boards. But guess what? They always want control, and dentists never want to give up control for fear of what, Craig? The outcomes to their patients, their team, and the uncertainty of the things like we talked about, the performance kickers, the clawback. Is this new co going to be viable that I had to take stock in? Okay. Problem number two is that fractional or minority investments make the investor, meaning if private equity never comes along and says, hey, I'd like to invest 20%, buy 20% of your practice. Problem is it makes that investor feel vulnerable now because they are not in control.
Okay? Right. Of course.
So it's either for them, it's like, hey, it's all or nothing. And I've heard them say that it's either buy 100% of the practice or nothing. And I know there's companies out there that do different. I'm just kind of speaking general.
Well, it's what the market has come to expect. It's what the market wants. The market has made this theory that if you take a bunch of practices and you aggregate them together and you call it a DSO and you offer some level of platform, poof, it is worth more. And the market will not reward those who, like, even if they say, hey, we have fractional ownerships in 15 practices, the market's like, we don't know what to do with that. We don't know how to fix that. So the market drives this. Investors in the market drive this.
And then problem three is, unlike a year ago when it was just when every broker, when every investment banker for dentists was just so busy they couldn't see anything, things are slowing down. And the reason they're slowing down is that there is now a limited money to be made.
Yeah. Limited access to capital.
Yeah, exactly. The general partners have an expected return to them by the limited partners. So a general partner is someone who runs the fund. Let's call it the
you don't have to go. You don't have to.
Well, I think it's important. We're educating here, right?
I know.
And then limited partners
granular.
are someone who's like, I'll throw $100,000 in, right?
Yeah.
So the cost of and usually a lot of that is done on leverage, meaning like, hey, we'll raise 100,000, but we'll also get a bank loan for 100,000, and then we'll have 200,000. So now the cost of capital has gone up, and
cheap money causes frenzies, feeding frenzies. Is what it really is. Yeah, and now
money. So now it's 10%. Let's just call it 10% for bridge and mezzanine loans and things that are speculative. So now you have to expect a higher yield because if bonds are paying 4%, like
all right, Pete, we got that. Yeah, let's get I get it. I just think I get it. There's macroeconomic factors, but for the average dentist that's listening to this, this is like it's just showing why this is all broke. Yeah. So let's just because there's a major important thing that we're trying to kind of. There's a through line here of what we're really trying to say. And it doesn't really have to do with macroeconomics. I know that you love it and I love it too, but for the average,
it drives a lot, but you are absolutely right. It's diverting. I am diverting us from the call.
Right. Yeah. And the cause is that we're under an existential threat because when the market will correct and rates will go down again, and this feeding frenzy that as you're talking about will resume. And when you look at veterinary and you look at dermatology, they're both like 80, 90% consolidated. That's the future of dentistry. We're going to get rolled up. We're going to get rolled. Every single practice, I believe, will be rolled up. And you and I have been sitting here thinking like eventually there'll be a great DSO. And as long as the market runs things, money, follow the money. Food, look at what's happening with food. Food is industrialized and processed and pharma and everything. I mean, there's the free enterprises being big companies win. Look at what happened through the CARES Act and the pandemic. Big companies got more money. So the speeding up of large companies is the velocity of acquisition and roll up and everything's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's happening.
Can I take a stab at what a model that I think would work? That I think
sure. And I'd love to crowdsource it too. So this is going to be an interesting thing. I want people to hear what you like, what I like, and what their wish list would be, because I think it'd be interesting.
Well, I think too, also it's important to point out that, like I said, we've been talking about this forever. talking about something, complaining about something, and then not taking action is like almost not, it's not helpful.
No,
So we finally decided to take action. But I think
feels
Craig, like
shitty.
Craig's saying, like, let's crowdsource it to the audience and see something that would work. So I'm going to spitball an idea here, Craig,
Yeah.
and I want you to poke holes in it, and then I want to make kind of a
Well, before you get to the granular, what would it fix? So what do you think the pain points? Maybe you were just about to go there, but I want you to go why.
What would it
Give me the
fix?
why. What does it fix? Who are you talking to?
I think dentistry, I'm tired of practicing alone, right? So now you can join something with someone, right? Whether it's, kind of like our mastermind does, right? Dentistry is lonely. So now it would fix some dentistry is lonely. I have a team. I have a squad. I have people that are I'm on a team. Okay.
Okay.
It would also fix, this event would also take some chips off the table, like you've talked about. Like having a liquidity event is helpful sometimes. And the cost, so there's the time value of money. Let's say you're in your 40s, and if you could have a partial liquidity event, not selling your practice, but a partial liquidity event where you could take some of the ownership of your practice, sell it, stay in control, nothing changes internally, and then invest that money.
Yeah.
The time value of money would make it 10 times more valuable, 5 times more valuable than if you sold that when you were 65.
Right. And also now you don't have concentration. So for most of us, you and me included, our practices are the largest percentage of our nest egg without any second. I mean, the next thing is a distant second. And if you really think of the practices and then you thought your real estate was a distant second, they're all tied to the same practice. So you have to lump that into one. So what you're saying is taking somebody and giving them a liquidity event and having them invest that in a different platform that's diverse from dentistry and having it grow into a money machine. That would be cool. And by the way, I want to clarify, like lonely. Lonely doesn't mean like, hey, I need someone to talk to. It's like, hey, I don't know how to fucking do this. Who's done this before? So it's like a think tank, like what we do in the mastermind.
Well, that's the true growth that you're talking about. Like, right, you would want someone who is a strategic partner who can help you get better systems, better processes, better applications, know how to grow practices, right? And in the entrepreneurial phase, because you yourself, you get into, like, how many times, Craig, have you been in what we call blue ocean, where you haven't been there before, you haven't made these decisions before, you don't know what you're doing. And so you seek the advice of mentors to say, hey, you've crossed this ocean before,
of course,
this big blue ocean. Can you show me the way? Can you show me
that's how I've learned everything. I just never had that in dentistry, but all my friends are the ones that have taught me how to, without my buddy John, it's his birthday today, coincidentally, I would not be where I am today without any doubt. Without you, look at how we've helped each other. Right. There's so many examples of that with us. So yes, the massive value in fulfillment and economics, just being in the right circle.
Right.
So I think the lonely is not as descriptive. It is a loneliness, but it's not superficial. Like, is it lonely? Like, yeah, no, it's like, no, are you in the wrong crowd? I mean, look, if you're just saying, hey, I freaking hate everything about my business, I have no fire in my belly, I literally want out, I don't think you're talking to that person, Peter, right now. Is all I'm trying to say. I'm trying to clarify your audience of who you're talking to. That guy, take one of the 74 mailers you've gotten and call them like tomorrow. But for those that are like, I want to create something different. So I don't want to steal this because I want to make sure that you're following your own train of thought. I just want to clarify your points because I know because we've talked so much. So go ahead. So a liquidity event, partial and investing time value of money, massive.
Yeah, and the enterprise value increase, right? Like if you're partnered with something, if you're loosely holding hands, if you're looking like you have the same systems and operations, right? The enterprise value, kind of like we talked about, the aggregation makes your ecosystem worth more, right?
Yeah. So what you're
control. So how do you do that without losing control and giving and selling all the equity of your practice?
Well, also
I think has been the big rub.
Well, also let's break it down. Let's just say that 7 years ago, when my practice wasn't really, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I'll even go back, it wasn't running really well. It was very low level of profitability. If you would have come in, maybe you and a couple of my mentors would have come in and said, we're going to take, I'm just using a random number, 30% investment in your practice right now. Okay. And I sold you that 30%. Right now, just judging on what the last 9 years have been, my 70% would have been worth 3 times what it
Right.
was, you know. So the 30% that I sold out, that 30% would have been nothing, because my 70% would have, am I making,
Yeah.
help me say what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that I'd rather have a limited interest in something that quadruples
Right.
than 100% of something that doesn't move.
Right.
So that's what's happened in my practice.
You're making your
My
metaphorical pie
profitability,
bigger.
yeah, my profitability of the last 9 years has gone up by sixfold,
Right.
fivefold, 5 times. So who cares? But and if I would have had the right people, fortunately they were just friends like you and John, my buddy Randy, and just different things I've learned. A lot of it's my own work. 70% is my own work, but 30% was them. So, and then imagine adding onto that, Peter, cost savings, healthcare, clear aligner fees, DSO level discounts on my practice supplies. I don't have any of that. I just had to grow my own scale. But
Right.
imagine if you layered that in, what would the real return be? Because we're just talking about like top line growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Procurement deals on insurance supplies, SaaS
Right.
products, Invisalign. You get bigger volume. You get bigger volume.
Reimbursements, Peter.
Yeah.
So that's what I think the traditional DSOs are good at.
To
just
me,
the
I
cost
think
savings.
I think it always lies with control. Me personally, right?
Well, that's because it's your profile. Your
right.
profile,
But I
yeah.
think when you don't have control, you worry, and it creates a different set of worries versus is my new patient's going to be a lot this year? Now, when you don't have control of it, all of a sudden are my team going to be okay? How's my patient care? Am I going to be okay? Was that enough money?
Yeah,
All right, we
yeah,
already
but
discussed that. So let me give a
but
model,
that's
right?
just
Because
one.
I feel like
Yeah,
there's I went to, like you said, we're crowdsourcing this. I'm going to spitball something that I think would be
please.
wise for Bulletproof to say, let's do this and invest in people's practice where everybody wins. Always back to the triple win where everyone wins. Because the thing that I think is interesting, Craig, is that there's in every exchange, right? We talk about that intermediation. The private equity is never necessary in a transaction. It's just that they got more sophisticated about doing things together and rolling things up and acting as the intermediary.
Right.
And now we've inserted them in this industry that
Right.
we always had buyers and sellers.
Right. But
All right, so let me give the model.
but just so you know, Peter, it's not just DSO private equity. It's
I
like
know.
when you
I
have
know.
Zillow, why do you need to call that real estate agent? Like we did yesterday in like why all these services, these ancillary intermediaries that make money through friction. If the private equity company actually made your company better, and again, I'm reiterating to the audience, if you have sold or know somebody intimately that sold their practice and it got better, please let us know. And like you said, Peter, I want to be wrong.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
want to, I want, oh, good. There's one out there. So keep going.
All right.
Keep going.
So let me give a hypothetical.
Let's hear it.
So Brian Kaleo, who you and I have had speak at the summit, right? He does pretty much his whole business is formation of DSOs.
Right. You need a DSO because yeah.
And you ask him why, and he says, "Well, when you're a dentist and you don't have your marketplace is the dentist, right? You can sell from a dentist to dentist." He said, "But when we form you a DSO or a management company, your marketplace is the world." Which may or may not be true. I don't, I guess technically because it's not the clinical aspect of dentistry. So I do have a management company, Craig, internally to serve some of that purpose, not for the standpoint of trying to create value, but it is a savings funds for our partners in practice, right? We take a percentage of top line revenue and we put it in our management fund every month. Okay.
Right.
That when you look at my EBITDA or net, the amount of money that goes in that fund, because it has no expenses, Craig, is pure profit. It is pure EBITDA because it has no expenses.
Okay.
So we have Atlanta Dental Spa, management company, and Atlanta Dental Spa. Okay. So here's where I'm going. But guess what?
Yeah,
the management company has no say into what the clinical practice can do, the employees, all the things, right? So it doesn't give any control. It's just, okay, I'm just drawing some I know people.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm anxious for you to tell me the concepts.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
I just want to, because I want to know the value.
So in this BP model, and again, we are crowdsourcing.
Right.
This is what I thought could be done.
And by the way, this conversation has bounced between us for, like you said, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And and literally I've gone to, I want to say one other thing too. I've gone to people who, like, advisors in the dental space. And I'm like, does this thing exist that has this, and this? And they said, no. I'm like, well, don't you think it should? Yes. Can you do it? Can I do it? We'll help you. If you can do it, we'll help you. But it's like imagine like pre-Uber. Don't you think taxis are dirty? Don't you think that you should be able to have a gig worker that can come up in their new car and pick you up with GPS and know exactly where you are and have safety? It's like an idea of that magnitude that just like, duh, it needs to exist. So tell us what needs to exist.
Right.
I want to hear.
So here's the example, right? I'm gonna walk you through it. All right. So Dr. Smith, he's got a great practice.
Right.
He's hungry for growth. He wants to expand his revenues. And we talked about that blue ocean, possibly locations. He knows what he wants, but he's really uncertain how to get there, Greg. And like we've always said, like, school doesn't prepare you for that. They're woefully ill prepared for the business of dentistry. So let's take Dr. Smith's practice. It's about a $1.2 million practice.
Gross.
Well, his top line, he collects gross collections are 1.2 a year. Okay. Yep. Which would be $100,000 a month.
Right. I'm following you.
All right. So in this model, let's just say there was a management company set up and it said, hey, I'm going to choose to set up a management company and put 8% of the revenues of top line every month into this bucket. Okay. Into Dr. Smith Management Company, LLC. Okay. So 8% of 100,000 is $8,000. Right?
Yeah. Again, Peter, I'm sorry to harass you, and don't get mad at me, but we've gone down to the very, very tactical, and I want to know why. I know you're going through the process. I'm following all of it. 8%. What is it fixing? What is I want to get into this part. Well, I just want to know.
It's fixing, you asked me this earlier. So it's fixing some of the problems of the loneliness, liquidity event, finding a partner to help you grow, increasing your equity value, getting deals on procurement, and remaining you in control of your practice. So it's fixing 7 things.
Okay, got it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we hit all those.
Want me to do it again?
No, but when I listen to this podcast later, I'll pause that and I'll write each one down, all 7 things. Okay, so go ahead. So 8% of your top line goes into the management fee.
8% of your top line, which is, so $8,000 goes into the bucket of Dr. Smith Management Company,
per month,
LLC, per month, right?
Yep.
Without fail. Right. Hypothetically, if there was someone who could invest into that cash flow from a top line perspective. So let's say you said, all right, I have Dr. Smith. I don't want to sell my practice. I'm going to leave the practice equity alone. I want to keep my practice, but I want someone to help partner with me who's going to be aligned with me to raise the top line revenue through whatever means necessary. Meaning,
oh yeah, we know how to do that, Peter.
Efficiencies in the practice, right? More dentistry enrolled, better clinical stuff,
basically the bulletproof pathway,
all the things, right? Yeah. Grow that top line from 1 to 3 to 5, right?
Sure.
But be incented all the way along because you're truly partners. You're in a alliance. You're in a bulletproof alliance with other dentists. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So now.
And plus, sorry to add on, sorry to cut you here, but do we also then provide all the procurement service savings and stuff like that as well?
It would be great, and there will be benefits from an aggregation that size because it's a phone call, but there's not a promise or an expectation because you're having a liquidity event, and that's the exchange. The primary thing is you're having some money, but yes, there will be benefit because it would benefit everybody. Meaning, it would benefit your practice, Craig. It would benefit Peter Boulden's practice. It would benefit the person Dr. Smith I'm talking about. So when you're all aligned and rowing, and everyone gets to win by the efforts of the other, that is a true alliance. And that's what I think is absent.
Okay? I agree.
So let me continue and then I'm almost done because it's really easy. So now you have a company, an LLC, Dr. Smith Management Company, LLC. And guess what? It makes $8,000 a month, free cash flow, right? So, and you're saying, hey, I'm Dr. Smith. I keep my practice. I actually have a management company now, but I only want to sell probably half of that management company because I want to see some of that savings account go into my own savings account. But I'm willing to sell you half of that bucket. So, hey, Bulletproof or investor, whoever, Pete and Craig, Dwight and whoever, right? I'm just saying, I've got $4,000 worth of free cash flow. I want you to help raise this bucket. Do you want to buy that cash flow of $4,000? You're going to be a 50% owner in the company, Dr. Smith LLC, Dr. Smith Management LLC. And you're going to, and honestly, we're both incented because I have 50%, you have 50%. Well, let's work together to raise that top line. For the rights to buy this,
Well,
the rights to this profit.
I'm getting a little lost.
It's so easy.
Yeah,
right?
I hear
Okay.
you. I hear you.
Hold on. Okay, we're spitballing. Let me just finish, and then I'll shut up. I promise.
Okay.
For the rights to buy this, right? So that would be on annual. That would be on annum. 4 times 12 would be $48,000, right? So, hey, Doc, how about here's $200,000 for the rights in perpetuity for that something, because that would be a 4X or a 5X, whatever it may be. That is a way. That is something that I have toyed around with, Craig, for a long time, because
I hear you.
Company would have no expenses. It's net money that is shared. You have a partial fund of buckets that you can have a liquidity event without selling any of your practice.
Right. I hear you, and I think and I love it, and it's okay. It's not surprising that Peter Boulden would come up with this, because Peter Boulden's pain points are control and other things. So what I'm speaking to is that there's a larger, and again, we need comments here. We need some comments on this stuff. So please, if you can sign in into YouTube and drop some comments on at the timestamps of what we're talking about here. But for others, that you're talking about this Dr. Smith, who maybe want to grow his existing location or grow other locations. There's other people that their practices are they're good people, they're good doctors. We would really like them. We like their values and the way they operate, but they just don't know what they're doing, and they're getting their ass kicked. Right. And they actually probably don't want 20%. They probably want like 60% sold. 60%, like, I'm confident, I'm willing to work, but I really want to exit. But they can actually be saved and make their practices better, but they may want a larger liquidity event. And my concern is that does this model that's so granular and specific work for everyone? What I would want to create is provide those 7 value propositions to all people. I shouldn't say all people, a larger sample size. Because if it is like, I just hate my practice, I absolutely hate it, my wrist is hurting, I can't work, you know who to call. But who do you call if you're all the other people that want to keep growing?
I guess my battle cry is this, Craig. You and I have talked about this.
Sure.
And I was just hypothesizing with a scenario that I think would work. And you're right. Would it be for everyone? No. But
if you built an algorithm that could.
Hold on. You and I, here's the battle cry. You and I have actively been talking about making investments in practices, either buying them together.
I would love it.
Or things like that, right? And
we were also in full disclosure, Peter, you were going to announce, like we both wanted to announce on the podcast, hey, if there's someone in Georgia or someone in Florida, let us know. And then it was a conversation like, hey, Peter, look at what we do with the mastermind. Like, I had a conversation, someone who wanted to join the mastermind recently. And it's like, it's a lot of money, whatever it was. I don't know. It's like $2 or $3 grand a month. I don't even know exactly. But I was like, listen, if this was 200 grand, or I actually said specifically, if this was 150, it would be worth it for you. Because at the end of the day, for those that are willing to do the work, your practice will grow by such a large percentage through the mastermind that the amount of money that you're paying me is incomprehensibly small. So when I go to buy a house and I see it on Zillow and I love it and I drive by, the only thing that real estate agent might have to do is open the door for me and let me into it. I may never speak to them again. And they get 3 or 4% of that entire house for just literally having the listing and opening the door. It's not a good exchange. So what I'm saying is that there has to be a method where we can use what we've learned, how to grow these practices, and help people put their own money back in their pocket and save costs as well. So what I'm asking as like a call to action is if you have ideas of what you'd like to see. And again, I think the example you gave is really powerful. It's good, but I would rather hear what people want, because you and I are trying to solve this problem for such a large swath of the industry. Everybody's got their own pain point. The Peter Boldens out there want to, make sure they have control. The Craig Spodaks out there want the team to feel better and make more profit. And so it's just such a multivariate, thing. So my question is, where can we direct people? Can we build something to direct people for this call?
maybe. I mean, maybe building a Bulletproof Alliance or something like that. But I think in the interim, like, email us it's actually printed on this YouTube thing, info@Bulletproof Dental Practice, which that email goes to both of us.
And it says, it's basically it's who you are, what your practice is, what's your pain point, is that it? It's what's your pain point?
Would we potentially invest in that practice, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on the person. Listen, working with great people is fun. Working with people that we don't really get along with is drudgery. But the right person who's like, I'm stuck and I don't know my next steps. It's basically the same person that would be great in the mastermind. And then we look at the bones and see what's going on. And then it's a partnership opportunity. Why not?
Yeah.
Because I know in my core, and I know you do too. Like, even when I said, I know this is kind of getting a little bit, this gave you sweaty back, but when I said what I said to Chris Ramsey, by the way, I could double your practice in a year. Peter, I wasn't joking. I really wasn't.
I know.
And I don't mean that disrespectful. Chris is my buddy. I could take that practice and make it twice as profitable. That's simple. Pencils down. I could. And I would, if that type of practice wanted to do that, I would do it with them, provided that they were really willing to grow. But if that's their pain, they never said they wanted to grow, so it's fine. But I would be willing to do that. I know you would too, with the right person. So it's, what's your pain point? What would you like to create in 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think this could help you? If you had a wish list, what would it be? What does it look like? And it may be some people are like, I really want 80% of my practice to be bought out. I want to keep some of it because I want to go for the ride, but I'm risk averse.
Or I really like Boulden's idea. That's a pretty neat thing there.
Right. But in order to have like a one size fits all solution, it would be cool to be able to craft it. And then the crowd will tell you, I like Boulden's, or I really rather have like 60% sold because I really am just risk averse.
I think at the end of the day, it's creating alignment, Craig. Like, look, truly holding hands in some financial capacity. I think, right? And it's
a next step above the mastermind.
A mastermind, correct?
It's like, mastermind's cool. You're helping me get it, and I'm good. I did 1 or 2 years. I'm out.
My team and my hygiene and the whole thing, and then it's probably the next step.
It's the next step up of involvement.
But instead of we had this conversation. Like, instead of putting your money in like the stock market and the SPY, like, I would way rather invest in my colleagues and the teams and practices.
But you and I know this. You know what? You and I know this business, and we have 190 some odd masterminders that we all made their practices better. We take their income before, and we take their income after. We know what we've done. So it's not like we're sitting here saying like, oh, we can open up ice cream shops and ice cream. We know. It's like, most hygienists are underproducing. Most doctors are underdiagnosing, under-enrolling. The bonus systems that they build are problematic. The supply costs are problematic. I mean, this is just like, duh. This is what we do.
Well, stay in your lane, right? It's a very
stay in your lane.
Every time I get diverted and I get a painful lesson that,
like when you and I have podcasts on real estate, by the way, it's cool. But we don't have to, I mean, you and I are amateur real estate people.
Right.
We have
decent experts in dentistry.
We are experts in dentistry. All things dental, Peter. All of it. All of it. So
I don't know. I'm glad we did this pod. I know you said, look, let's just get on. I know it was almost spontaneous. Look, we did 2 long ones yesterday. We're having a good cadence here, bud. And today you're like, dude, let's just get on and spitball and like, let's hear people. Let's talk. Let's create dialogue around like what it would look like for people. Yeah. And I was like, really? We can do that? And you're like, yeah, they're our friends. They're the people we know. Yeah. They're our colleagues.
Yeah. So it is a call to the industry. It is, in my opinion, the most important podcast we've ever done, because it fixes the existential threat. And the fact that you and I are, opening it up to the audience, I think is a powerful step. I mean, I want to hear. I hope that it's received. I know I've had like a dozen or so masterminders say, hey, if you ever figure out how to fix this thing, let me know. I want to be involved.
Ever do a bulletproof DSO? And there's just such a negative connotation with the three letters DSO. Unfortunately, remember we did that we crowdsourced that on social media, and it was like, do you have a positive take on the word DSO or negative? And it was overwhelmingly negative.
Like, well, is it positive or negative to you? Like when you think of the not yours, it's super negative to me.
Yeah, it's super negative.
Super negative.
You're right.
You know, that's just
why now it's changed to a DPO, and you hear DPO and all these little fancy names. It's like, oh, it's all the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So anyway,
exactly.
But Alliance is not, Craig. Anyway, but
that was fun. Listen, the branding is obviously different, but the intention and what it would be, there's nothing like it. And and honestly, I hope what would be also a cool outcome from this is that someone else hears this.
Right.
And fixes it the same way we're trying to fix it. Like this is Craig. Like we don't care about losing this battle. We want to win the war. We want someone to do this better. And there's no one doing it. No one's doing it better. But we are going to have somebody on the podcast coming up soon that's going to be interesting. Someone who sold and compelling story. So I don't want to steal that fire, but he's happy because he couldn't see his way through. But I'm going to hit him with this hard question of like, how about if you would have had this alliance thing? How would that have been?
Yeah. Damn it! I should have done that.
Should have done that.
Yeah. You're gonna create like, oh well, misgivings about decisions.
All good. We should always look in the rearview mirror and try to do it better.
All right, bud. That's
cool, man. Thanks for that.
And we are. Yeah. Guess what? I'm putting some music on.
Yeah. Rock and roll.
See you guys next time.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Pete.